Hi, I'm Paul Feiner.
And good afternoon, I'm Pauline Mosley. Welcome.
And today we have a really interesting program. We're going to be interviewing the former head of the Greenburgh Planning Board, who also wrote a novel, The Grand Entrance. And this novel is really similar to what's happening in the country right now. There's a lot of, when I was reading this, I said, it's not really a novel, it's almost...
well, hopefully it isn't totally factual. Hopefully some of it becomes fiction.
Yeah, I hope so. But before we talk about the book, I wanted to present you with a proclamation because you has served for 21 years as a member of the Greenburgh Planning Board. He was vice chair for 8 years, chair for 2.5 years. And many people, like myself,
Yes.
we take credit for everything that's happening that's good in the town. But it's really the volunteers, people like you
Behind
and
the
you on the
scenes.
zoning board, who it's a team that makes the town look really great.
Mm-hmm.
And the elected officials get the credit, but all the volunteers are doing a lot of the hard work. And during Hugh's tenure, Greenburgh accomplished a lot. Thanks in large part to your efforts, we approved a master plan that resulted in Regeneron having a major expansion with over 1,000 county jobs. You helped recruit a very diverse planning board, probably one of the most diverse planning boards in the history of the town, whether it's relating to race, age, geography. You helped draft a law regulating the construction of the continuing care facilities, and you also came up with efforts to promote more affordable housing and sustainable energy. A few years ago, we had a problem in terms of batteries, and it was really controversial, and you were involved in a committee that resolved it, and by the time you came up with the recommendations, it wasn't even controversial anymore. You're co-chair of the Accessible Viable Living Committee. You basically have led the group in its first year quantifying the need for affordable housing. You've identified tools to address the need. You proposed a comprehensive law relating to accessory dwelling units, and the town board is going to be taking that up. And there's so much more. You've also co-founded Viable Living Incorporate, a not-for-profit organization to help facilitate the funding for affordable housing in the county. You've served as chair and CEO of Hudson Valley Center for Innovations, and you've just done a lot of great things during this whole Edgemont Incorporation. You were one of the first people to highlight the importance of keeping the town together. For a couple of years, initially, most people in the town weren't paying attention, but you kept persisting, writing letters and letters and letters to elected officials, and meeting with our lawmakers in Albany, meeting with people in the community, highlighting we can't ignore this problem. So now there's a coalition, the Save Greenburgh Coalition, that's fighting this. But before that, it was a lonely effort that you and Walter Simon were pretty much one of the only people who really were involved.
And my wife.
And your wife.
Janet.
So I have a proclamation over here that I'd like to present to you, and then we'll
Thank you
talk
very
about and then we'll talk about the book.
Congratulations.
Thank you.
Phenomenal achievements.
I want to thank Paul, because this all started at a Mexican restaurant on Central Avenue. We were having dinner. At the time it was, do you want to be on the zoning board? And luckily something came over the planning board. I didn't know the difference at the time. Both boards are important. I absolutely love being on the planning board because of the longer term aspects of that and the policy issues that come up before the planning board. It wouldn't have happened without Paul. By the way, the other thing for the record, my daughter may not have happened if it wasn't for Paul. Paul
Really?
was extremely helpful in, he adopted our daughter from Russia.
Oh.
And Paul and Sherry, his wife, were extremely happy. In fact, even reviewed the video that we brought back from Russia in your house. And I remember your wife going, "Oh, you have to take her." And she's 23 years old now and doing very, very well. So, Paul's been a very important part of our life in Greenburgh and obviously very important to the town as well.
Very important to
That's
the
good.
town. Very important, Paul.
Good. I'll make sure my wife sees this testimonial.
Yes, that's
But
wonderful.
I wanted to mention you wrote a book, The Grand Entrance, and it's a really interesting book. And it's when you see all the what's happening in the United States right now, this book also highlights politics at its worst. Actually, what happens if somebody wants to run for president of the United States and somebody is behind the scenes, a country behind the scenes is manipulating the election. So maybe you could tell us, maybe give us a little summary about what the book is about.
Okay, I mean, the overview of the book, it's about the Russian mob and them creating a strategy to overthrow democracy in the United States. It may sound familiar, we've talked about, you hear about interference, the crazy Facebook ads, but it's a lot more than that. The fact of the matter is, when our constitutional fathers wrote the Constitution, they really never anticipated where the loopholes in the Constitution. Unfortunately, a group of people, and I think it may have started in Russia, but clearly one of the presidential candidates, the one with the orange face, have figured out how to circumvent it. And it isn't just an insurrection on January 6th. If it was just that could be taken care of, but it's actually systematic. And what this book does, in fictional form, but it shows you step by step how it happens. And if you think about it with the parallels of what's happened, first thing you think about is, well, create an enemy. All right, it's all those people coming over the border from South America, for example. They're the enemy because they're taking away jobs. No, they're standing on the street corner in White Plains taking jobs that nobody else wants, and that's how construction gets done in this country by those hard workers that are there every day. So that's the first thing, you create an enemy, and you see it again now with the Haitians eating cats and things like that. I mean, same thing. Then what you do is start messing with local politics and trying to take over state houses, which they did, the Republicans did. When you do that, you can start gerrymandering districts, which is why popular vote in the last congressional election, I think the Democrats won the popular vote in the congressional election by over 3 million votes, right? But they lost the House. That's why that happens. Then once you do that, you find somebody to run for president who has zero ideals and just wants to be president, which they did. And then that person starts installing people. So you now have 2 branches of the government. Then you take over the third branch, which is supposed to be our guardrails, which is you start appointing Supreme Court justices. So that's a strategy, and it's all laid out in this book as to what that is.
Right. So first I want to say congratulations.
Thank you.
You and all your wonderful accomplishments and
Thank you.
achievements and enhancing our community. Secondly is, can you just backtrack? Thank you for the summary, but what actually motivated you to write this book?
Well, I have this friend who's been a politician, and unbeatable for over 30 years. You may know him. His name's Paul Feiner. I've written a whole bunch of short things, like op-ed pieces and letters to the editors for years, and I always had an interest in politics. My desire, I never did it, was to actually be a campaign manager. I would love to do that. I do believe in democracy in this country. I do believe in and personal representation. The thing that I've loved about Greenburgh, and I'm hoping it's not changing, I'm worried it is, that this was, under Paul, this has always been a town where people can access anybody and everybody, and people would listen to the community. I see less of that now, unfortunately, than I did 10 years ago. And I hope we can stem the tide and turn it back the other way. So I've always had an interest in politics. And as I said, I'm not really a left-wing Democrat. I mean, I voted Republican. I'm probably, if the Rockefeller, Javits people were still around, I'm socially liberal, and I'm an economic moderate. Let me put it that way. Okay, that's what I am.
I had a question relating to your book. So much about your book is about, it makes people like, it's sinister motives, where there's other country that's influencing our democracy. Did you start writing the book before President Trump had his first term?
No.
Did you get the ideas, or did you come up with some of these ideas because of current history? Like, is the current news influencing the book?
Well, the book was finished in January, and there are things in the book that were probably predicted things that have happened since. And if you read the book, you'll find that out. I've gotten some comments about, how did you know that? Well, I didn't. I just surmised it may happen. But to answer your question, it really was, a lot of it's based on history. And, I've followed threats to the United States back to, the McCarthy era, and learned about that. And everybody forgets that Robert Kennedy Jr.'s daddy sat right next to Roy Cohn on the McCarthy committee. People forget that. But so it is very much based on history and what's happened. What happened in 2016 and also on January 6th definitely were motivators to write the book.
So did you, in your book, your experience being on the planning board, the strategies and just dealing with people and various themes that emerged, political challenges that you've seen with your experience on the planning board, did you take any of that and incorporate that in your book, or was there any similarities? Did you draw upon those experiences when writing the book, or the book was just more not with those experiences?
I don't know, with what's gone on lately with me in Greenburgh, that may be true. I'm not sure, except that happened after the book too. Clearly my experience, and it's very different as I found, I really didn't realize this, even as vice chair, when you become chair of the planning board is not supposed to be a political body. And all of a sudden when you become chair, you realize it becomes a lot more political because you have to be more sensitive towards what the town board is thinking, even though you're supposed to be independent. Okay, that's what the law is. You're supposed to be independent. So I'm sure it has some effect that way. It has an effect actually after the fact, because as I watch the evolution of the town of Greenburgh, okay, I get concerned because it may not be the Russians doing it in Greenburgh, but somebody is in changing what has made this town the best place in the state to live for all these years.
I have a question. Do you have any thoughts on what the United States could do going forward so a foreign country can't basically have influence in electing a president of the United States? Because what's scary about your book and about what's happened in the country right now is our democracy is really being eroded. And if you have the Russian, Secret Service basically manipulating the elections and creating crises, it's just a horrible thing. You have China now influencing the governor's office. So you have spies all over. And what can we do?
Well, it's very simple, actually. It's the people. The people can change it. And just remember, none of this would happen if they didn't have willing participants in the United States. The Proud Boys, Donald Trump, unfortunately, the majority of the Republican Party, which I just don't understand. You know, the good Republicans, and look, I'd never agreed politically with Cheney or Kinzinger, either one of them, are much further right than I'll ever be. But at least they had principles. Okay, and so that's the problem. We're allowing people to take over and diminishing the power of our voting. And the only way that can be overcome is by overwhelming voter turnout. And I'll give an example locally. Okay, Edgemont. Edgemont had never turned down a bond issue until this year. Myself and a gentleman named Lucas Chaffee, a fantastic guy, a West Point grad, and I've known him since he was a kid. He lived on my street. And I campaigned and told them why this bond issue had to go down. And it lost with double the turnout ever in one of those elections. Double the turnout. Turnout's important. You want the town board to respond to what you do, you need to go out and vote. You need to challenge them with other candidates that are alternative. Not that you necessarily replace the people on there, but the best way to make somebody better is to challenge them. Challenge them and don't put up with it. And unfortunately, in Greenburgh now, it seems like everything's done by the Democratic Committee. Nobody seems to overturn that and fight against that. And we need to get back to remember, one person, one vote. We also, nationally, need to get rid of the Electoral College. That's the other thing that has to
I agree. The Electoral College really should be gotten rid of.
So, Hugh, how long did it take you to write this book? And if you don't understand, who is the audience? Who's the target audience? Is this for can high school students read this? Can anyone read it? And,
sure.
And
it's actually easy reading.
Yeah, who's the audience?
Okay.
And then how long did it take you to write this book?
Okay, first of all, in terms of targeting, I hope high school kids read the book.
Wonderful.
Because I think one of the problems today, too, is I don't think the younger kids are really involved in this to the point they need to be. Because just remember, I'm a product of the 60s. Paul's a product of the 60s. You're much younger. So it was what we did in 68 that stopped the Vietnam War and made Johnson resign, not rerun for president. That's what it was. It was the youth movement that did that. We need that again. We need to get them involved, but they need to be educated. I will bet you go to any school, even Edgemont or Scarsdale, go into the schools and ask the kids who the congressman is, or congressperson is, all right? I will bet you that less than half of them know who it is.
Oh, no, I would basically agree. I know you've written like a lot of letters to editors over the years, writing a letter to the editor, short, it's easy, much easier. Writing a book like this, which is how many pages?
296.
296 pages.
Yeah.
It must be. How long does it take you to write a book?
Yeah.
And is it you've had experience working for Fortune 500 companies and business. You've worked in government. Is writing a book harder or easier than the other jobs you've had?
It's like anything else is a commitment. It took me. I started a year ago Labor Day. I started. I planned to finish it on December 31st. I finished it on January 1st, the first draft. I did it, and actually it was my wife, because I said, she's been bugging me to write a book. Not on this. I have 2 or 3 other book ideas that she's been bugging me for years. She said, I can't write a book. I can write 500 words or 1,000 words. A book is 80,000 words, and how am I going to do that? And she said, just write. She said, I've heard just write 3 or 4, few pages a day. I said, okay. So every day I'd put aside 2 hours, write 4 to 6 pages. And the way the book's designed, you'll see it's short chapters, which I like anyway, because I love James Patterson, because I can end a chapter. I don't have to stop in the middle of a chapter. So the book was written chapter by chapter that way. So I knew exactly where I wanted to write, what I wanted to write. I knew how it was going to end. And I knew the plot going along, although I added stuff as it went along and did research. But it was just every day. I probably missed between Labor Day and New Year's, maybe 5 days in total. That was it.
That's phenomenal.
Would you be able to, for our listeners, give like some of the highlights of some of the plots in the book? You don't have to tell too much because we want people to read the book, but just so people can have more of a taste of why this book is so a must-read.
Well, it's important on not just a political level. You look at it on more than one level. The other level is about independence and control. Okay? This was a person, the protagonist, who is a kind of a Donald Trump-like character. Not exactly. There's some differences. But, in the interest of him getting control and absolute power, he cedes control. And throughout the book, there's a lot about that and people getting leverage points. And, be careful what you wish for is the answer to that. And the other answer to that is there isn't a shortcut, particularly if you don't give up your principles, which is, again, one of the problems in politics today. People compromising their principles, not present company accepted, but people are compromising their principles in the interest of politics. And I see it locally, I see it statewide, and I see it nationally. And it's scary as heck because that is the thing that will bring the country down.
In your book, the candidate who wants to run for president, his name is Peter Bliss?
Peter Bliss.
Yeah. And what type of experience did he have before he ran for president?
He actually, it kind of parallels to Trump. He had a father who came over from Sweden and started a series of laundromats, and then decided, gee, this is really good, and decided I could do an entertainment thing with it and started movie theaters. And he flunked out, he got kicked out of Stanford. Peter Bliss did for cheating with term papers and trying to sell them. So he was not only immoral but stupid at the time. And so his father said the only thing left is to take him under my wing, and he did. And he was a good salesperson. Sound familiar? It sounds like Donald Trump, right? In that regard. It's not Donald Trump, people. He's not, Donald, if you're listening, it's not you. So that's how he started. He was targeted, and again, you have to read the book to understand there's a secret person who isn't revealed till the end of the book that was monitoring what was going on in the family and this guy's development, and that created the target from the Russian mob to begin with. It's, we need to find somebody who's pliable, who just has a thirst for power and has absolutely no moral fiber whatsoever and doesn't care what the policies are. Could just as easily been a left-wing Democrat if that was the opportunity. So that's how the book's laid out. But it's very much, there are lessons in there underneath the fiction as well as the political lessons.
What are some of the interesting aspects of the campaign?
His campaign?
Yeah, his campaign.
His campaign, unlike Trump, he was not an extrovert. This guy was not an extrovert. So he had to be handled. But what he did very much is create events. And he becomes successsill through a television show. Again, sound familiar. But it created some events that actually was used. One of I think the more fun things, and I wrote it hoping that maybe it'd be turned into a movie someday, when he announces for president. It was on his TV show that he announced for president. So that was a lot of fun to write.
And was he taken seriously when he started?
Oh, he was at that point, I think, because he had this big following from politics. The other thing you should know is where the Russian mob was based. That town is real. It's where my daughter was adopted from. And the cafe is real. And the Russian mob actually hangs out in that cafe because I've eaten in that cafe.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, that's the town. That's where they hang out. So there are things like that. People who know me, there are things in there. The headmaster of my high school is in the book. His name is in the book. There are people's names in the book. One of the companies that was involved in the TV show was actually an analogy to a company that I actually took over and turned around.
So it's great. Before I forget, if somebody wants to buy the book, And again,
Yes.
this is the name of the book, The Grand Entrance, over here,
Right.
by Hugh Schwartz. How do they get the book?
They can get it on either barnesandnoble.com or on Amazon.com. You can go to your bookstore. I wish we had more sales there. Most bookstores can special order it. It was at the bookstore in downtown Scarsdale, Bronx River Bookstore. It was at Walmouth bookstore in Bronxville as well.
Right. So before we close out, can you just explain how you derived at the title, the Grand Entrance?
That was purely the image of Donald Trump coming down the golden escalator at Trump Tower. That's where that came from.
Right. And so for any of our listening and viewing audience, if there's someone in the audience that aspires to be an author, what tips or advice would you give? Because you've given such wisdom today.
You have to sit and do it. You really, if you have an idea, start writing it. Okay, little by little. And the other thing I'd love to do, and hopefully Mr. Feiner can help me do this, I would like to find all the other authors in the town of Greenburgh and have an author's night at the time.
I think the library.
At the library.
That would be awesome.
They have like library events with authors. You may want to reach out to the Greenburgh Library and ask them if you could have a discussion of your book.
I'd love to do that.
That would be
So that would be
great.
good. I could reach out to them also and advocate. Are there any disappointments in terms of writing a book?
It's frustrating. There were 7,300 edits the first time through. So editing the book took 4 months. The most frustrating thing is trying to break through when you're not with a major publisher. Marketing the book is very, very difficult. That's the hardest part. And when people know about the book, they buy it.
Right.
But to get it out there, I've run Amazon ads, I've done things, still don't have the the leverage I need to do it. As I said, when people see it,
Right.
I did a book signing outside of a bookstore. I did very well that day.
So
Right,
how
right,
can people
okay.
reach you if they want to? People want to invite you on their show, or people want you to discuss their book they can
write me
organization. How can they contact
at my email HughSchwartz.com. Hugh Schwartz at cs.com.
Okay, can you spell that for our viewing?
It's HUGHSCHWARTZ at cs.com. I don't take donations at this point. I'm not running for anything. So.
But no, this is really excellent, and hopefully our country will survive.
Let's have a celebration November 6th. Yes.
Everybody always thinks it's the worst, but as I've learned from newscasts, we've had worse experience in the country, like the Civil War. And I mean, are you an optimist about the future?
If it is a legitimate election and people don't try to disenfranchise votes, I think I'll be optimistic. I'm very concerned if the margin of victory by Vice President Harris isn't significant, that there's going to be a lot of games played, and I want to see if the system survives this. I hope so.
And again, manipulation by foreign countries really is erosion of democracy, and the whole thing is scary with social media. How you could just make up things about anybody.
Absolutely.
And people believe it. I want to thank you for your service to the town of Greenburgh.
Thank you for the opportunity to do that.
I really love this book. I thought it was easy reading, and wish you great successes and a Pulitzer Prize.
Thank you.